friends, I Nikat Parvin Khan welcome you all in this Polity FTR series of competition community, and in today's session we will be dealing with the important objectives related to these two important topics of the constitution, and that are parliament and local self-government. Before moving on to the objectives, I would like to tell you this. These two topics, especially the parliament topic, has the most variety of questions. So today's session is gonna be a bit longer session just because variety of topics which has to be dealt in this particular topic. Although we can't take all the topics in today's session, we will be dealing with 12 questions related to these two topics and few important concepts related to the topic of parliament. And regarding local self-government, we are only here taking the objectives of the constitutional provisions related to the Panchayati Raj system and the municipalities, and we won't be dealing with the local acts, the Chhattisgarh Panchayati Raj Act or the Chhattisgarh Municipality Act. We won't be dealing with the questions related to that because that part will be covered in the Chhattisgarh GS FTR. Fine, only 3 to 4 or 4 to 5 questions we will be seeing related to this topic, and that will be superficially based on the 73rd and the 74th Amendment, that is only the constitutional provisions. Fine, so just because we have to deal with many important concepts related to parliament, so today's session will be a bit longer session as I have already told you. And one more thing I have to share with you all, competition community is coming up with a weekly test series related to FTR. All the topics and all the questions you will be dealing in 1 week, may it be of Chhattisgarh GS or it be of National GS, all those topics will be covered in a test which will be held on Sunday at 11 a.m. Fine. So as our session commenced on 15th of December, so if you count 1 week, so the coming Sunday, in the coming Sunday, a test will be held at 11 a.m. in which there will be 50 questions related to polity and the morning session of Chhattisgarh GS. Fine. So go register yourself for the test. It's free for all the subscribers. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and the test will be available in our website. You have to register yourself on Friday for the test which will occur on Sunday. Fine, so these many things I had to share before moving on to the session. Now let us move on directly to the questions related to these two topics. Let's first see question number 1. Which of the following event is not considered to be an indication of loss of confidence of the lower house of the parliament? Fine, not considered to be indication of loss of confidence. What does it mean? That which of the following statement is not equivalent to the no confidence motion? Fine, not exactly the motion, but the theme behind the no confidence motion. So, no confidence motion means when the parliament loses the confidence over the present ministry or the present government, then the credibility of the government becomes questionable. And there is a threat to the government that it will soon get dissolved by the motion if it comes. Fine. So let us read one by one the statement and let us try to analyze whether that statement is related to no confidence or not. Adjournment motion is carried. Whenever an adjournment motion is brought in the Lok Sabha, is it similar to the no confidence? No. This statement is wrong. Adjournment motion is usually brought to adjourn the present agenda of the meeting and to discuss on any matter of urgent public importance. Say, for example, in a particular meeting of Lok Sabha, the agenda of the meeting is the agriculture bills. Fine. Few amendments related to agriculture bill. That is the main agenda for which the parliamentarians have gathered that day. And during the discussion on that agriculture bill, if anything important happens in the country, like for example, any riot occurs, any natural calamity occurs, so that particular event which has occurred needs an emergency attention from the parliamentarians. So while that thing is occurring, while that incident has occurred, the parliamentarians cannot continue discussing the agriculture bills. They have to pay attention to that thing and they need to discuss that incident which occurred in the parliament. So for discussing that matter of urgent public importance, the present agenda will be adjourned, and for adjourning so, this motion is brought. So it has nothing to do with the loss of confidence of the parliament on the present government. So it is not related or not equivalent to no confidence. So this is the correct answer, and let's analyze the other three also. Vote of thanks on the president's address is not carried. Is it equivalent to no confidence? Yes, it is equal to no confidence. Vote of thanks is a speech which is given by the president of the country whenever the new Lok Sabha is formed and its first session is held. And also in the very first meeting of the first session of the year. These two times, the president addresses both the houses, and that is known as motion of thanks. Motion of thanks, which is a speech by the president, actually carries all the important manifestos and the achievement of the present government. That particular speech of the president is prepared by the government only. So actually, what president is doing in this motion of thanks is actually formally speaking out about the achievements of the present government. So that speech is prepared by the government only. The vote of thanks, if doesn't get passed by the parliament, it will be considered as a no confidence, that the parliament has lost confidence of the government because it has not passed the achievements and the manifesto of the government which president has spoken out. Fine. So it will be considered. Cut on money bill is passed. It will also be considered as a no confidence. A government has brought some plans and project, and for that it has requested the parliament to give its approval on the finance allotted for that plans and project. But the parliament brings any type of cut motion to cut the finances or cut the economy of that plans and project. So it will be considered that the parliament has no more confidence in the present government which has brought that plan. So this will also act as a no confidence. Fine. So statement C is also somewhere related to no confidence. Coming to the statement D, censure motion is passed. What is censure motion? Whenever, listen carefully, whenever the parliament wants to censure any policy or the decision of the government, then it brings censure motion. Although censure motion is a bit different from no confidence motion, but then too, if this motion is passed, the credibility of the present government declines, and it may happen that few of the ministers of that government may resign, taking the responsibility of that policy which has been censured or the decision which has been censured. Although if censure motion is passed, the entire council of ministers doesn't have to give the resignation, but yes, the credibility declines, therefore it is considered as no confidence. No confidence, not no confidence motion. Fine. So this is also equivalent to no confidence. So statement B, C and D is considered, but A is not. So the answer is option A. Adjournment motion is carried. Fine. If there is any other doubt, see, I won't be able to explain everything in detail because it is a very bulky topic, very complicated and a very varied topic. So I can only tell you few things here. And if you want every concept in detail, go to our mobile course, go purchase our mobile course. There I have dealt all the important things in detail, which will be beneficial for you in the exam. Fine. Let us now move on to the question number 2. Which of the following statement is not correct? Again, an incorrect statement has been asked. Let us first analyze one by one, and then we find out the answer and we'll reach to any conclusion. An appropriation act is not essential for passing a grant under a vote of credit. Appropriation act is related to the appropriation bill mentioned in Article 114. Any type of grant has to be drawn from the Consolidated Fund of India. At that time, appropriation bill has to be passed. Appropriation bill act is a key to the lock of the Consolidated Fund. Whenever you want to draw the money from the Consolidated Fund, may it be for the pension or the salaries or the allowances or any plans or projects, whenever you want to draw money from the Consolidated Fund, there has to be an approval to the appropriation bill which comes in the parliament. So therefore I said it acts as a key to the lock of the Consolidated Fund. So any type of grant, it may be vote of credit, it may be exceptional grant, it may be additional grant, it may be any pension, it may be anything if drawn from the Consolidated Fund needs the Appropriation Act to come. Then only you can withdraw money from the Consolidated Fund. Fine with that. So therefore, this statement is incorrect because it is saying is not essential. But what I said, it is essential for every type of grant which has to be withdrawn from the consolidated fund. So this statement is incorrect because it is saying it is not essential to be passed. And what is vote of credit? Vote of credit is a type of special grant in which the ministry takes an extra amount from the consolidated fund for any unforeseen cause. It is also known as a blank check, wherein the ministry is not able to mention the exact reason for which the money has been withdrawn, but yes, it is saying that it might need that money in future for any unforeseen cause. So it is just like a blank check, vote of credit, wherein it takes some amount extra for an unforeseen cause. Fine. So if this type of amount has to be withdrawn, then also appropriation bill has to be passed. Fine. Therefore, this statement is incorrect. Coming to second thing, reappropriation does not involve any additional expenditure. This is right or wrong? This is right. What is reappropriation? Reappropriation generally refers to a type of special grant which is known as token grant. When a ministry decides that it has to shift its money allotted for one purpose to another purpose, then it reappropriates that amount of money from one purpose to another purpose. Like say for example, I have been allotted during the time of budget 100 rupees for my plan A and 100 rupees for my plan B. But during that financial year, I estimated that I won't be needing 100 rupees for plan A, rather I would be needing only 50 rupees. And for plan B, I'll be needing extra money, at least 50 more rupees to execute that plan. So now I want that for plan A, there should be 50 rupees and for plan B, there should be 150 rupees. So for managing that extra 50 rupees, I won't be taking any extra grant from the consolidated fund. I will only be shifting this 50 rupees from plan A to plan B. And for that, I have to make a mention in the consolidated fund that it has been reappropriated from plan A to plan B. So here, this is only known as reappropriation, shifting the money from one to another plan. Fine. So it is not involving any type of extra expenditure or any grant. So therefore, this statement is correct. Fine. Coming to statement C, the Rajya Sabha has no power to vote on the demands for grants. Exactly, it is correct. Demands for grant is a type of grant which ministry asks during the time of budget. There are on and all 109 demands for grant, and there are 103 out of these 103 civil grants, and there are 6 military grants. So demands of grants is a stage during the process of passing a budget wherein the ministries makes a demand of grant of money from the consolidated fund, and if it is passed, that amount of money is given to that ministry. Fine. So there are two important clauses related to demands for grant. First is the demand for grant is only an exclusive right of Lok Sabha. Rajya Sabha cannot vote over the demands for grant. And secondly, demands for grant doesn't include the expenditure charged on the consolidated fund. Fine. So it doesn't include expenditure charge. It only includes expenditure done on the consolidated fund. Fine. So first clause is only the statement C, the Rajya Sabha has no power to vote on the demands for grant. This is true, as I said. Coming to the statement D, no amendment can be proposed in the appropriation bill in either house of the parliament. Is this right or wrong? It is right. Whenever this particular bill under Article 114 is brought, the purpose of bringing this appropriation bill is just to get the assent of the entire parliament to unlock the consolidated fund. And at that stage, when appropriation bill is getting passed, no amendment is done. Whatever amendment has to be done, that was done till the stage of demands for grant and not after that. Fine. So statement D is also correct. So if it is asked, we find out or pick the incorrect statement. So the only incorrect statement is A. So our answer will be A. Fine. Coming to the next question, question number 3. Consider the following statements. A bill pending in Rajya Sabha which has not been passed by Lok Sabha shall lapse on dissolution of the Lok Sabha. A bill pending in Parliament shall lapse by reason of the prorogation of the House. From which section this question has been asked? This question has been asked by the section of dissolution of Lok Sabha. Dissolution of Lok Sabha. Whenever you study the topic of Parliament, under that topic you will be studying a subtopic called as the sessions of the Parliament, and in that subtopic there is one point named as dissolution of Lok Sabha. We all know that Lok Sabha dissolves after every 5 years, and also if President wants, it can dissolve the Lok Sabha in between. Fine. So whenever the Lok Sabha gets dissolved, it impacts the pending bills in the houses or on the table of President. Whenever a bill is getting passed, it can be in either of the 3 stages. It can be pending in Lok Sabha or in Rajya Sabha or on the table of President. Fine. So there are 6 to 7 such conditions which you have to study related to the future of any pending bill. Whenever Lok Sabha gets dissolved and the bill is not yet been passed, then what happens to any of the pending bills which is in either of these 3 stages? Fine. So there are 6 to 7 conditions, and in few conditions the bill automatically get lapsed, and in few conditions it doesn't get lapsed. So from that section only this question has been asked. If you haven't yet studied that section, go through that section, because I cannot deal it in detail here because it is itself a half an hour session for that. Go through that section and then you can relate these statements and whatever I am explaining relatable to that here. Fine. So from that section only the question has been asked. Let us read the statement. A bill pending in Rajya Sabha which has not been passed by the Lok Sabha shall lapse on dissolution of the Lok Sabha. Is it true or false? It is false. If a bill is pending in Rajya Sabha, it is pending in Rajya Sabha and it has not been passed by the Lok Sabha, it means it has not yet reached Lok Sabha, nor it has reached on the table of President. Rajya Sabha, if it is pending in Rajya Sabha and not passed by Lok Sabha, it means that the bill is of Rajya Sabha only. It is under consideration in Rajya Sabha only, and because it is not passed from Rajya Sabha, it has not been forwarded to Lok Sabha, nor it has been forwarded to President. Fine. So such a bill which is exclusively of Rajya Sabha, which has originated from Rajya Sabha, will not lapse if the Lok Sabha dissolves at that time. Fine. Will not lapse. So in this statement is given that it shall lapse, and this word makes this statement incorrect. Therefore I said the entire statement is incorrect. Fine. Coming to the statement number 2, a bill pending in Parliament shall lapse by reason of the prorogation of the House. What is prorogation of the House? Prorogation word is related to the end of the session of the Parliament. We know that whenever a series of meeting which is known as session of the Parliament is towards its end, a prorogation order is released by the President, and that prorogation ends the entire session, whether it be a regular session or any special session. Fine. So once the session is prorogued, that prorogation doesn't affect the pending bills, because those pending bills will be taken in the next coming session. Like, say for example, if a winter session of Parliament is going on and there are few pending bills, and if this session gets prorogued by the President, these bills won't get lapsed, because these bills will be taken in the next budget session in February. So prorogation doesn't affect the bill. And here in the statement it is given that a bill pending in Parliament shall lapse by reason of the prorogation. So this statement is also incorrect. So according to our analysis, both the statements are incorrect. Therefore the correct answer is D, neither 1 nor 2. Fine. And if you haven't yet gone through this particular section, go through this section in my original lecture, because it is very important. It's very conceptual. Fine. With that, let us move on to the next question. Question number 4. Which type of majority is required for removing the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha? See, this type of question is oftenly asked, and it is one of the most favorite topics of the PSC, related to which it frames many varieties of questions. I have here put only a very straight question, but we can get an idea of the basic concept involved in such type of questions. See, for passing any type of bill in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, there are four important types of majority required: simple, absolute, effective, or special. It is pre-mentioned by the speaker that for a particular bill, which type of majority will be required. And what is majority? It is the minimum number of votes required to pass any bill. Like, say for example, there are 100 members in a particular house, and for passing a bill of changing this pen, I want to change this pen. I'm a parliamentarian. I want to change this bill, just this pen, and for this, I need to bring a bill for changing this pen. So there are 100 other parliamentarians, and I will bring a bill of changing this pen. And the speaker has mentioned earlier only that to pass this bill of changing the pen, at least 75 members should give their assent. Fine. So if out of 100, at least 75 members give the assent, then only that bill will be passed and the pen will be changed. So that number of 75 is only the majority. What does that mean? Speaker has pre-mentioned the minimum votes required to pass the bill. Fine. So these are four types of majority, and for removing the speaker and deputy speaker, effective majority is used. Effective majority. What does it mean? It means 50% of effective seats. Now, what are effective seats? Effective seats is equals to total seats minus vacant seats. Like in Rajya Sabha, we know that there are 245 total seats presently. Fine. And if a resolution related to the speaker and deputy speaker's removal is getting passed, and on that day, 5 seats are vacant. 5 seats are vacant doesn't mean that 5 people are absent. Vacant seats mean few of the MPs either have resigned or have died or have disqualified, means they no more hold any seat in the parliament. That type of seat is known as vacancy. Fine. Either resignation, vacancy of seat means either due to resignation or due to death or due to removal. Fine. So due to death, removal, or resignation, let's take an example that 5 seats are vacant. So if we subtract these vacant seats from the total seats, then only we'll get the effective seat. We are only taking an example over here. Fine. So if any bill has to be passed by the effective majority, we need a majority of these effective seats, means 50% of 240, that means 120. So if such a resolution is to be passed, we are taking an example of Rajya Sabha, although it is not possible because speakers, the resolution to remove a speaker will be passed in Lok Sabha. We are taking an example just to make you understand that how this effective majority works. Fine. So any resolution which requires effective majority has to be passed. Then in Rajya Sabha it will need, if there are 5 seats vacant, it will need at least 120 members to give the assent, or else it won't be passed. Fine. Therefore, I said 50% of the effective seats. And effective seats means total seat minus vacancies. Fine. So that is effective majority. And for knowing about other majorities, go through my parliament lectures of mobile course, because I can't deal it here because it will take a lot of time over here. And this session is gonna be a longer session because parliament has many variety of concepts. And in this session, I cannot go in depth of all the concepts. Fine. So answer is option C, effective majority. Let us move on to the question number 5 now. Consider the following statements. The expenditure charged in the Consolidated Fund of India comprises. Few moments ago, I was telling you about the expenditure charged on the Consolidated Fund while I was explaining a question related to the budget. So this question is related to that only. It is asking which of the following is included in the charged expenditure. So you need to know what charged expenditure means. See, the expenditure made from the Consolidated Fund. Consolidated Fund are of 2 types. One is charged and another one is made. We say expenditure charged on the consolidated fund and expenditure made on the consolidated fund. Fine. Expenditure made on the consolidated fund comprises of all the expenditure for the payment of any liabilities or money withdrawn from the consolidated fund for any projects or any plans which has been laid down in the yearly budget. So made expenditure is a votable part, whereas the charged expenditure is a non-votable part. It can only be discussed, but no voting is taken on the charged expenditure, and it includes 10 types of expenditure which are specially related to the pensions, to the salaries and allowances of the important central level constitutional posts. So go through these 10 types of charge expenditure. Do remember that these expenditures are non-votable and it has to be withdrawn from the consolidated fund. Only discussion can be made in this. No voting can be taken. Fine. And I'll be telling you few of the expenditures which are charged. You need to remember these 7 posts: President, Vice President, Speaker of Lok Sabha, Vice Chairman of Rajya Sabha, the members of UPSC, the judges of the Supreme Court, and the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Fine. The allowances, the salaries, and the pensions of these 7 units are included in the charge expenditure. Along with these 7, the pensions of the High Court judges and the borrowings of the central government is also charged on the consolidated fund. So from this list only, this question has been framed. So let us see one by one which will come under it and which will not. Pension payable to the judges of High Court. Yes, just I said this moments ago that the pensions of the judges of High Court are charged, but the salaries and allowances are not. Debts charges for which the government of India is liable. Yes, it also comes under this. Salary allowance and pension of CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Yes, I gave you the list. If you can remember that list, you can answer this question. All the 3 statements given here is included in the charge expenditure, and therefore our answer will be A, 1, 2 and 3. Fine, I hope you understood what charge expenditure is. If you need any more clarification, you can ask me in the comment section. Coming to the next question, question number 6. Which of the following is not correct with regard to the Speaker of Lok Sabha? See, the Speaker of Lok Sabha is the favorite topic, one of the most favorite topics of PSC, and you can find many questions framed or asked from this particular section. There are many special powers given by the Constitution of the Speaker. There are many important responsibilities. There are many minute clauses related to the post of Speaker, and questions oftenly come from all these sections of Speaker. So what you have to analyze here, which of the following is an incorrect statement to the Speaker? First is the Speaker certifies whether a particular bill is a money bill or not. Yes, it is correct. We all have studied in the chapter of the Speaker that the money bill and finance bill comes in Lok Sabha only. It is presented in Lok Sabha only, and Speaker only decide that whether a bill is a money bill or a finance bill or a normal bill. Fine. So this statement is right. Discussion on a motion for the removal of the Speaker is presided over by the President. This statement is wrong. Whenever there is a resolution brought for the removal of the Speaker, it will need effective majority. This we had studied few questions back. But do remember, whenever the proceedings or the meeting is going on for this removal procedure, on that day, Speaker won't be presiding the Lok Sabha. Then who will be presiding? The Deputy Speaker will be presiding and not Vice President. Do remember, it has been mentioned in Article 94 and 96 that Speaker won't preside and he can be removed by the effective majority. Vice President won't preside, neither will Speaker do. The Deputy Speaker of the House will preside over the meeting in which a resolution is getting passed related to the removal of Speaker. So this statement is incorrect. Fine. The third is the Speaker has power to curtail or cancel 0R. This is correct. 0R is the session between the question hour and the agenda of the meeting, and It can be of 5 minutes, it can be of 5 hours. There is no definite time limit related to 0 hour, and the speaker has the right to increase or decrease the time period of 0 hour. So this statement is also correct. The speaker nominates chairpersons of different committees. This statement is also correct. Speaker himself is the chairman of many committees of the parliament, and the deputy speaker is also the chairman of many committees, and speaker only nominates the chairman of all the other formed committees. So out of all these statements, only the statement B is incorrect, and you had to pick the incorrect statement only. So our answer will be B. Fine. So that is it with question number 6. Now let us move on to the question number 7. The token cut motion seeks to reduce the proposed expenditure of demand for grant by what amount? What is token cut expenditure or token cut motion? This is a type of motion brought during budget at the stage of demands for grant. Demands for grants. And during this stage, three types of motions are brought, or the three types of cut motions are brought. First one is economy cut motion. Second one is policy cut motion. And third one is token cut motion. MPs bring these types of motion to cut down the extra amount of any policy which has been proposed in the budget. Fine. The important amendments or the changes or the curtailments of the amount is done through these three types of cut motions only during the procedure of passing of budget. So I'll be directly coming to the token cut motion. For knowing about the rest two types of motions, rest type of cut motion, you need to refer to the lectures which has been dealt in detail. In token cut motion, an MP wants to draw the attention of the House towards a particular plan, and for that he says that I want, say for example there is a plan which has been allotted 100 crores in the budget, and on that particular day the demands for grants are being made by the ministry. So during that time all the conversation inside the House will be done in terms of money only. If cut motion has to be brought, then also the way of saying that has to be in terms of money only. So for plan A, say for example 100 crores are been allotted, and I am an MP, I want to draw the attention of the entire House towards that plan, and I want to have a discussion on that plan, I want to propose few changes on that plan, and I want that it should be discussed. So just to draw the attention of the House towards that plan, I will bring a token cut motion and will say that I want to cut down rupees 100 from the 100 crores allotted to plan A. I repeat, I want to cut down rupees 100 from the 100 rupees allotted to plan A. So here I am using 100 rupees as a token to draw the attention of the House towards that. So if I am cutting 100 rupees, it won't make any impact on that 100 crore budget, because it won't get impacted by only mere 100 rupees. So the 100 rupees cutting down is just a token or an indication that I want a discussion on that particular project. So it is only in indicative language we use rupees 100, and if this motion gets passed, that particular plan is taken for discussion. So this is known as token cut motion, in which rupees 100 is cut down. So from this explanation you will get the answer here. It is asked, it seeks to reduce the proposed expenditure of a demand of grant by rupees 100. So answer is option A. Fine. I hope you understood, and go for my lectures in detail to know about the economy and policy cut motions further. So that is it with question number 7. Coming to the question number 8, we are now heading towards the questions related to the local self-government. 2 questions will be, 2 to 3 questions will be based on the Panchayati Raj system, and 2 questions will be based on the municipalities. And I had told you earlier that in today's session, we will be discussing only the constitutional provisions and won't be getting into detail into state acts. Fine. So only we will be dealing with the 73rd Amendment and 74th Amendment, and Schedule 11 and Schedule 12. 73rd Amendment and 74th Amendment both occurred in the year 1992, by which Schedule 11 was added, which is Panchayati Raj system, and Schedule 12 was added, which is municipality. Fine. So next few questions will be related to this only. Okay, consider the following statements related to Panchayat and you need to pick the correct ones. Panchayati Raj system was started from Nagaur district of Rajasthan. It is correct. We all know that on October 2nd, 1959, the Panchayati Raj system was started from the Nagaur of Rajasthan and it was followed by Andhra Pradesh. So first statement is correct. Balwant Mehta Committee instituted the three-tier Panchayati Raj system. This is also correct. We know that before the commencement of the Panchayati Raj system, few committees were formed like Balwant Mehta, G.V.K. Rao, Ashok Mehta, etc. And the first in a row was Balwant Mehta Committee, and this committee only suggested a three-tier Panchayati Raj system, that there should be a Panchayati Raj system at district level, at Janpad level, and also at village level. So this statement also holds true. Fine. The third statement is Nagaland, Mizoram does not have any Panchayat system. This is also true. After the 73rd Amendment and the commencement of Panchayati Raj system, probably all the states in India adopted the Panchayati Raj system compulsorily, because through the 73rd Amendment, Panchayati Raj system was instituted in compulsion in all the states. But because of the local circumstances, few states are exempted from this compulsion, and those states are Nagaland, Mizoram, and Meghalaya. So, this statement is also true because these three states doesn't have Panchayati Raj system. And the last one is Panchayati Raj system is established for building democracy at ground level. This was one of the main objectives of establishing this system. So, this statement is also correct. So, our correct answer pick will be E. All the above are correct. Fine. All the statements given here related to Panchayati Raj are correct. Fine. Now, let us move on to the next question. Question number 9. So, question number 9 is what to make sure is the basic purpose of Panchayati Raj system. What it is actually asking, Panchayati Raj system was instituted for what main purposes? So here main aims, objectives or purposes of incorporating Panchayati Raj system is mentioned. You have to analyze which one is correct, which one is incorrect. Public participation in development. Yes, this was one of the main aims of the Panchayati Raj system, because Panchayati Raj system actually implemented the DPSP of Article 40, in which Gandhiji envisaged that there should be a local administration at the village level also, there should be a Gram Panchayat also. So he wanted to make or to ensure the participation of a layman also in the administration. So indeed, Panchayati Raj system is related to more and more public participation in development. So this was one of the objectives. Fine. Political accountability? No, this is wrong. Why it is wrong? Because only the central and the state governments are expected to be accountable to the people and not the members of the local self-government. Political accountability is there, but it was not one of the objectives. Fine. Democratic decentralization? Yes. Actually, Panchayati Raj or municipality, these two are the one words for political decentralization only. Decentralization means whenever the power is getting decentralized from the central level to a local level. So when you are creating Gram Panchayats or anything related to the local administration, that means you are giving the power of administration to a very lower strata of the society. Fine. So the power is getting decentralized. Yes, this is only known as democratic decentralization. Therefore, option 3 is also correct, or the statement 3 is also correct. Coming to the statement 4, financial consolidation. No, this was not one of the purposes. So only 1 and 3 statements are related to the purposes. So our pick will be option C, 1 and 3. The correct answer is C. Fine. So that is it with question number 9. Coming to the next question, question number 10. Arrange the following given committees of related to Panchayati Raj in order by which they came into existence. I told you few questions ago that there were many committees which were formed before starting the Panchayati Raj compulsory system in India, and there were 4 such important committees. for which you not only need to know the name, you also need to know the years of their formation. And this question has been framed from that section of years only. Fine. So, 4 such committees were Balwant Rai Mehta, G.V.K. Rao, L.M. Singhvi and Ashok Mehta. We need to pick the correct order of their formation. I'll be telling you here the years and you can pick the correct order. Balwant Rai Mehta committee was formed in the year 1957. Ashok Mehta committee was formed in the year 1977. G.V.K. Rao committee was formed in the year 1985. It has been mistakenly written over here. And L.M. Singhvi in 1986. If it is not clear, I will repeat. Balwant Rai Mehta 1957, Ashok Mehta 1977, G.V.K. Rao 1985 and L.M. Singhvi 1986. So, Balwant Rai, Ashok Mehta, G.V.K. and L.M. Singhvi. Which is the correct order in the given options? It is option B. Balwant Rai Mehta, Ashok Mehta, G.V.K. Rao and L.M. Singhvi committee. Fine. So I can't go into details of important recommendations of these committees, but go through the recommendations given by all these 4 committees because a question from that section is also usually asked. Right? Coming to the next question, question number 11. Which of the following are functional items in the 12th schedule of the Constitution? So this question is asked from the 12th schedule, which was added by the 74th Amendment 1992. And what it is municipality. Municipalities. Fine. So it is related to the urban local self-government municipalities, and which are the function items means actually in 12 schedules by this amendment 29 works were allotted to the municipalities. 29 subject matters were given to the municipalities on which those municipalities can function, can take a decision, can make plans and projects. And these elements are taken from this only. You need to analyze that which of the following given elements are from the list of 29 elements and which is not in the list. Fine. And what things are there in this list? These are the important works which an urban local self-government has been allotted by the Constitution. Roads and bridges. Yes, it is included because any local self-government, whether it be Nagarpalika, Nagar Nigam, whatever it be, it has the responsibility of building roads and bridges at local level of the town. Urban forestry, yes, it is also there. Urban poverty alleviation, yes, you can go through the list of 29 subjects and also go through the list of 18 subject matters mentioned in the Schedule 11. Fine. Schedule 11 of the Panchayati Raj. From that section also question usually comes. Non-conventional energy sources, no, it is not mentioned in this list because non-conventional energy sources is one of the subject matter of the concurrent list. Concurrent list means the list on which the central and the state governments both can frame laws. So, it is a subject matter of the central legislation or the state legislation and not the local legislation. So, it is not included. Fine. Regulation of the land use, it is also included. So, for that we know that only option 4 is incorrect and rest 1, 2, 3 and 5 are correct. And in this question, only the correct statement is asked. So, our pick will be B, 1, 2, 3 and 5. Answer will be B, 1, 2, 3 and 5. Fine. So, that is it with the question number 11. Coming now to the last question of today's session, and that is question number 12. Here a question of match the following is being displayed in front of you, and on one side few important institutions are mentioned and on another side the ministries are mentioned. You also need to study the important departments which come under the important ministries of a country. Whenever you study the miscellaneous part in the subject of polity, you need to study this also, that in which ministry, which particular department comes. From that section only this question has been framed. So let us see and try to match it. Panchayati Raj system, it has been covered under the Ministry of Rural Development. Municipality comes under the Ministry of Urban Development. It is very simple thing. Cantonment boards, it comes under Ministry of Defence. Why it comes under Ministry of Defence? See, cantonment boards are also a unit of urban administration, but these cantonment boards are mainly related to the military. Wherever there is a cantonment of military, a cantonment board is formed for the civil administration of that particular area. So this cantonment board is related to the defense. Union ministry comes under Ministry of House Affairs. So what will be the correct match? For 1 it will be D, for 2 it will be A. Let us try to find out. For 1 it will be D, and for 2 it will be A, for 3 it will be B, for 4 it will be C. Option B is the correct answer. 1D, 2A, 3B and 4C. Fine. So that is it with today's session. We had dealt 12 such questions which could help you in solving many other questions of these topics. We can't take all the concepts, all the subtopics because of the time constraints, but then too I had tried to explain you the basic concepts behind each and every question so that you can solve any question related to those topics at least. So that is it with today's session, and we'll meet tomorrow at 6 p.m. with the live Polity FTR session. So be prepared. Thank you so much.
CGPSC की संपूर्ण तैयारी के लिए कंपटीशन कम्युनिटी के YouTube चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कीजिए और डेली अपडेट्स के लिए बेल आइकन को प्रेस करना ना भूलें।